So, when we left Rocky last, it looked like he had finally had his satisfying conclusion. He had his last great fight, and the legacy of Rocky was secure, completed, perfectly bookend, period. And for a lot of people, Sylvester Stallone included, that was the end of Rocky. Where was there else to go with him at this point? And yeah, I would agree with that. But as we mentioned, when you create something like this, when you have created something this long-lasting and this beloved, let's not be modest here. Rocky is beloved. I know he's a popular, ironically a popular punching bag for comedians and whatnot, but the character of Rocky is truly beloved, and beloved across boundaries, across gender, across religion, across race, across generations. Young people love Rocky. Young filmmakers, as it turned out, love Rocky. And one young filmmaker, Ryan Coogler, most famous, of course, for Black Panther. A little shout out to Chadwick Boseman there, folks. As I'm recording this, he just passed away, so little love for the king. But anyway, he was a big fan of the Rocky franchise. He tells the story that, he was an athlete in high school, and before a big game, his dad would put on Rocky 2 for him and have him watch it to help him get, excited and pumped up. So he has great affection for the Rocky franchise, and as a young creative person does, he came up with an idea. What if Apollo Creed had a son, an illegitimate son, who wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, and he enlists the aid of Rocky Balboa to help him train. And from that, flushed out, became the groundwork for Creed. First of all, before we get into the review, can we just admit, and I think a lot of people, the confidence and the balls on Ryan Coogler. Now, Sylvester Stallone does not strike me as a guy that's unapproachable. He strikes me as a really nice guy, a really loving and attentive person. Seems like he really cares about his fans. There's stories of him, when they're shooting these things in Philadelphia, how he will just get mobbed and he'll hold up filming for hours because he's signing all these autographs. He doesn't want to send anybody away. So he doesn't strike me as this really mean person, but still, I would not have anywhere near the courage to go up to him and say, hey, I've got an idea of what I'm going to do with your characters, with the thing you created. Nobody has done that. The Rocky franchise has been Sylvester Stallone's baby since its inception. He wrote all of them. He directed all but 2 of them. He has been the primary creative voice in that franchise. And if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to write a continuation of one of your plays, of your characters, of your babies," it'd be like, "You think so?" And for him to kind of have to do that, and again, Ryan Coogler does not strike me as a disrespectful or rude person in the slightest, so I don't, but still, I mean, damn, that takes courage. And for Stallone to kind of go along with it shows his faith in the product as well. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way, because I got mad love for Ryan Coogler, and we'll talk about that in a second. So anyway, let's talk about the story if you haven't seen it. So a young up-and-coming fellow by the name of Michael B. Jordan plays Adonis Creed, the illegitimate son of Apollo Creed and a woman we are not, we're never introduced to. The timeline is a little confusing. For it to work, he must have conceived Adonis right before he died, like literally, like a month or two or something like that, because he was born after he was killed. So young Adonis Creed, as a boy, is in a lot of trouble. His mother died, so he's on his own. He's angry, and Apollo Creed's widow, here played by Felicia Rashad, because it has to be, because Felicia Rashad's awesome, tracks him down and says, you're my family. You're a piece of my husband. I'm going to raise you. And she raises him up. And he's got a good job. He's educated, but he's got a desire. He's got a need that he doesn't quite understand, to fight, to be a fighter. His mother does not support this, because why the hell would she? And he decides he's going to make a go of it, so he goes to find the one person he feels can help him, and that is not only his father's friend, but also the guy who kind of got his father killed, that being Rocky Balboa, and convinces Rocky to train him to be a fighter. Let's not beat around the bush here. Let's not, mince words. I fucking love this movie. This is a phenomenal film. Outstanding movie. Even taking it outside of the legacy and the saga that it's a part of, and saying if you had never seen any of the other Rocky movies, this film would still be fucking amazing and fucking phenomenal. But it becomes something even more. It becomes something almost transcendent when you add the history and the legacy to it. Because that is what the movie is about. It's about living up to a legacy. Do you want to live up to the legacy? How much of the legacy do you want to be a part of? That feeling that I think a lot of people have when you're following someone's footsteps. You want to show respect to somebody, but you also want to be your own person. And all of this is encapsulated in Adonis Creed himself. And of course, everybody knows, I'm teased about it quite often, big time man crush, Michael B. Jordan. This guy is the deal. He is the future. And this, what for me, was his star turn. He puts on an acting clinic, because there is a lot going on. To continue the legacy of Rocky, where Rocky is only a supporting character, it means that you have to create a new character for us who is just as compelling and just as interesting to follow. And Adonis is. He is a completely unique creation. Mixing together, of course, the black perspective, mixing together elements of Rocky himself. What I like about the character of Donnie is that, in a way, he's a lot like Rocky. At his core, he is a very good person. He is a very good person. In this first one, he's got some anger issues, but that is not a thing that defines him. He is not, the stereotypical angry black man that you see in a lot of movies where all he does is rage and fight. He's a good kid. He's a good guy. And it's only when something pisses him off and his temper kind of flares up that he kind of loses his head, as we all do. And he's a person wrestling with identity. Who am I? How angry am I at my father, and how much do I desperately want his approval? There's a lot of conflicting emotion in him, and it's all downplayed. It's there, but it isn't brought out in these melodramatic, "Oh, Daddy, why?" kind of things like a lot of lesser movies would do. It lets the character go through the journey and discover those things, and lets the audience kind of enjoy the journey without feeling the need to preach at us about the journey. You know, that's confidence in your writing, that's confidence in your story, that's confidence in your actor. That's good directing. And of course, I mean, Sly's back. Rocky himself is back, and he falls into the Mr. Miyagi kind of role here. The guy who is, trying to impart this knowledge. And what I like is, again, they are always so careful of preserving the legacy and the continuity. You can see in him. I had only, as I mentioned, I'd only seen Rocky V in pieces, and that was back when I was a kid. It wasn't until recently I actually saw it all the way through for the first time. So when I first saw Creed, I was seeing it without the information of that fifth film. So when he is hesitant to train Adonis, when he actually is training him, I was just taking it as, okay, he doesn't want this kid to get hurt. He wants him to have a better life. He doesn't want him to, go down the same road his father did. He feels guilty about letting Apollo down, all of that. Now, having seen the fifth one, as I rewatch this movie, I see some of the other nuances in there of not wanting to repeat the mistakes he made with Tommy Gunn, and making sure this kid is not a ticking time bomb that you're giving all this information to that they can use against you, kind of thing, or they can use for the wrong reasons. And you see that when he's, kind of iconic scenes, like when he's having him box, shadow box against the mirror, and he says the guy in the mirror is the guy you're fighting. I believe that in boxing, and I believe that in life. It's interesting to kind of see where Rocky has ended up. That, again, when you feel like you have the perfect ending in Rocky Balboa, so now where does he go? Well, he's kind of a little bit in the same place. Of course, now Paulie has passed on as well. His son and him kind of have a estranged relationship. It's not bad, it's just they're not close, and he feels bad about that. So even though he's better than he was at the beginning of Rocky Balboa, he's still kind of in a lonely place. He's kind of resigned, and he's resigned to that fact. And then, of course, through the battling of this and through the film, Rocky ends up getting sick, and he gets cancer, and he says that, I made a deal with myself long ago that if I break, I ain't going to fix it, because, what do I have? Everything I've got is back there. My wife's gone, my friends are gone, my life is kind of gone. Why fight through it? So, I think the adding the cancer thing at first feels like a ploy for cheap drama, but I don't think it is. I think it's a nice inciting incident to understand what Donnie actually means to Rocky and what Rocky means to Donnie, and how much that relationship has grown and how important they feel to each other. That, Donnie gives him another reason to live, gives him a reason to fight. He says, you fight, I fight. If you don't fight this, I'm not going to ever fight again. And, I really dig the chemistry and the relationship between Adonis and Rocky. It is in the best traditions of, again, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel, that kind of thing. Not kind of a surrogate father, uncle, but friend and teacher and mentor. It's a great relationship that is formed here between two really good actors, really bonding both on a personal and on a character level. It's fascinating to watch. We also got to give heavy praise to Tessa Thompson, who plays Creed's girlfriend Bianca in the film, because, again, as we discussed in all these previous reviews, Adrian is really the most maligned character, historically speaking. People just, really put her in that you're never gonna win, Rock category, which is not what she was, but it's what history has kind of painted her as. So if you're introducing a new love interest for a new character, they have to fill that same role of the support character, the reason to go on kind of thing. But you don't want them to just be the same person. Just younger. You don't want just young, new this or whatever. So you got to create a new character, and that is what, as a storyteller, I think that is something Ryan Coogler is incredibly gifted at. He creates fully formed, interesting characters. There's very rarely characters in his stories that are superfluous or just kind of there. All of them have a history and have wants and needs and flaws and desires, and ones that work off of the ones of the other characters. He has a great understanding of ensemble on the page and on the stage. Here's an interesting detail. Tessa Thompson's character, Bianca, is going deaf. This is something that, doesn't really need to be there, but it gives her a sense of urgency. It gives her a character motivation. She's a musician, and she's not going to have her hearing for long, so she's got to do what she's got to do now, which means she doesn't have a lot of time for Adonis's bullshit. And she calls him on it when he's being an asshole. So yeah, I love that. That's another really strong, really great relationship between character and actors that those two have. I've been praising it from the beginning, but let's get real specific now. Let's get real specific now, and let's talk about directing, because, boy, this film just shows off how great Ryan Coogler is. This film is directed in such a way, I can't even describe it, because I'm not a film person. I never went to film school. I'm a theater person. But I know certain things, but I can tell you, just watching this film, it feels like it's always in motion. Even when the scene is still, it feels like the film is moving, I'm not sure what he's doing there, but what I like about Ryan Coogler as a director, especially watching him in this film, this is one of his first big films. He'd done smaller independent things, but this is like his first big budget, big studio, big stars thing. And what you find with a lot of young directors when they get that is they just go fucking nuts. They have this toolbox, they've got all this candy, and they just eat it all because, when am I ever going to get to use it again? But what I see when I watch this film is I see a young director flexing his directing muscles, but never at the expense of the story and never at the expense of the scene and the emotion. Other young directors, when they're given this opportunity, don't have that restraint or that knowledge to go, okay, I need to pull this back. He clearly does. And he's got a fantastic directorial eye. Especially in things like the boxing matches. Adonis's first boxing match is, under Rocky's tutelage, is all done in one shot. The camera is constantly kind of doing a 360, showing the crowd, showing the two of them. It's all done in one continuous shot. It's bloody fascinating and awesome. But it's a subtle thing. It's not something that he's pulling out every time, but it's something that he's doing there to go, to make the film more dynamic, to make it his own. If Creed 2 really suffers from anything, it's not having him as a director. The director who took over him is a little bit more paint by numbers, a little bit more conservative. Whereas I think what makes this film stand out is how good the directing is. Is this movie flawless? No, but it's pretty close. I can't think of anything that really I would have done differently with it. When I watch this film, there is not a lot in it that I can't think of anything in it that I'd go, I guess the only thing I'd say is his final boss, the guy he fights at the end. It's not really, he's not that well established. And the final fight feels like it comes out of nowhere. They're trying to kind of recreate the Apollo Creed plucking Rocky out of obscurity kind of thing from the first one, with them kind of going after him because of his name, because they need somebody to fill in for this guy. But without any kind of connection to the person, without any kind of connection to the fight, it doesn't feel like it has the stakes. Minorly. Like I say, it feels like it has stakes because the stakes are all personal, much like the original Rocky. It's less about the fight and more about, the fight, the internal struggle. But still, I don't even consider that a flaw. But if I had to pick out a flaw, that'd be the only thing about this movie I could really point to and say that could have been done better. The rest of it, it's just a fucking phenomenal movie. Not only is it the best possible continuation of a series, it is taking that series not only in a new direction, but taking it from a different and new point of view. And it's the coming out party for two guys that I still say are going to rule Hollywood and are going to be huge influences on pop culture going forward. And if you needed proof of that, a couple years, Ryan Coogler's next film was? Black Panther. So he went right from this to a cultural redefining film that made billions of fucking dollars. All right? This guy knows his fucking shit. And he is a fantastic director. Michael B. Jordan is an outstanding actor. And yeah, this film, I love it. I love everything about it. So, I guess before we wrap here, I don't have much to say in terms of wrapping up the Rocky franchise. But we'll do the wrapping up here. I won't do a separate video. Let's just talk real quick. I'm not going to do a Creed 2 review, and that all rhymes, because I've already done a Creed 2 review. It hasn't gone anywhere. I reviewed it right when it came out. Having rewatched it as part of this experiment, it still holds up. My review still stands. The only thing I will say in retrospect is, having seen it on DVD now, there's a deleted scene that I really think they should have left in. And it's a scene at the end of the film, at the end of the fight, after, Creed has won, he's beat Victor Drago. He's leaving, and he sees Victor sitting in his locker room, just sitting there, hanging his head. And he goes into him and sits down next to him, and he says, I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you're more than just this one fight. We both are. And Victor looks at him and kind of gives him a nod, and the scene goes on a little too long because they do the same thing with Rocky and Ivan Drago, and they didn't need to do that. But I really liked that moment in the film, because I feel like what that moment does, not only is it a great character moment for both of them, but it shows that they are not going to make the same mistakes that their fathers did. They're not going to let this one incident define them. They're going to go on. Who knows? Maybe they're going to meet in the ring again someday. Maybe he will win the championship someday. It's saying that we're not going to let one incident and one thing define us for all these years like it did for Ivan and for Rocky and for everybody who knew Apollo, basically. Our legacy is not going to be this. Our legacy is still being built. I really liked that. It was a perfect microcosm of the entire film. So I wish they would have left that in. Going forward, I don't know. Because the funny thing about the Rocky franchise is that with every film, that came out in it, it always wrapped up in a way that you said, okay, Rocky's story is done. And then a few years later, here comes the next one. And it feels like a logical continuation. I thought they should have left it at one Creed film. And then the second one came out and it was fantastic. So the question now is, where do you go with the Creed franchise? And my personal opinion is, you don't. I think it is time, at least for the time being, until some new filmmaker with some new take on it, how to continue this story on, comes. I don't think there is anything left that needs to be done. What new obstacle is there for Creed to overcome? He dealt with his father's legacy versus his legacy in the first one. He dealt with the literal demon in his past in the second one. Where is there for him to go from here? You know, I heard one person kind of jokingly say, you know, unless he's going to fight the cybernetic son of Clubber Lang, which don't fucking do that. I mean, the only way I think they could go on and do a third one is if they gave him some opponent that is unique to him and some challenge that is unique to him. We can't just keep retracing what the Rocky films did. We'd have to go back to the original Creed and try to find, you know, something, a new demon, a new challenge that he has to overcome. And I don't know if I want them to do that. I'm happy with where the series is at. I think Creed 2 brings it all home. But I'll be honest, if they finally do a Creed 3, I noticed there for a while on Michael B. Jordan's IMDb page, they said Creed 3 pre-production for a while. If you go back and look at it now, that's not there anymore. So I don't know. I don't know why that got scrapped, probably in the 2020 fallout. But at any rate, I think the Rocky franchise has come to the point where it needs to come, and it's not until somebody new comes along with some great new idea. Maybe Rocky Jr.'s son decides to become a fighter. I don't know. But I think it's safe for now to say these are 8 amazing films that are great individually, and taken as a whole, they're even greater. I love the Rocky films. I love the Creed films, and I've had a blast going back and rewatching them and talking about them. So that is the cap off for the Rocky series. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We've got more series to come. So, until next time, yo Adrian, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.